I'm joined now by Sourabh Gupta. He's a senior Asia Pacific and International Relations Policy Specialist at the Institute for China-America Studies. Let's get right to it. What do you make of the time of this visit by the State Councilor? We see that, it's only been 2 months since Trump had his state visit to China. And as Rowie mentioned, there have been a lot of tensions as of late in this relationship. So how important was it for this meeting to take place?
I think this meeting was very important to take place. Of course, we have the Winter Olympics, and obviously that's linked to the Korean Peninsula issue. We have a number of trade investigation-related measures, trade enforcement-related measures, which will happen in the next couple of weeks. But I think the more important perspective to bear in mind is that this relationship needs continuous nurturing. It's a very important relationship. And in the past 2 months, there hasn't been that sort of nurturing, and there have been some ugly, harsh words said, particularly in terms of some of the reports that the U.S. side has put out in this period.
And one of the big outcomes out of this meeting between Yang and Tillerson was renewing the 4 dialogues for this year. Will that resolve what's been happening with trade, what is happening with the military, and some of these other cultural exchanges? And we know that it's something that's been in place for some time now, even before the Trump administration. But what do you make about these 4 dialogues?
The 4 dialogues obviously were very important, particularly the comprehensive economic dialogue and the diplomatic and security dialogue. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen on the comprehensive economic dialogue, frankly, in which they discuss some of their trade quarrels and market access issues, because the U.S. came out very strongly in the past 2 months saying that that has not worked, that has failed. Now we are moving to a different area, and that area will purely be about trying to tell China to change its trade policies so that it adheres to the rules, etc. But China is obeying the rules, and frankly, in all these cases which are being brought against China, if they do go subsequently to the WTO, the U.S. really doesn't have a strong case to make. So it's best to discuss these within a bilateral institutionalized dialogue framework, I feel.
But do you think it'll take more than just one meeting to do that? I mean, one of the 4 is just set aside for trade and the economy.
Yeah. Oh, it'll take many more meetings. I think the real reason State Councilor Yang was out here was this relationship needs nurturing. In the past 2 months, it's basically been going downhill. It needed a senior figure to try to put this back on an even keel. It will not get back immediately on an even keel. We will need President Trump and President Xi to weigh in on that front. But it was important that somebody as senior as State Councilor Yang came out here and tried to right things and try to steady the ship, basically.
You mentioned the Olympics, which the opening ceremonies begin on Friday. The DPRK, again, a major topic between these two. Given this recent military parade in the DPRK and the Olympic Games and the goodwill that comes around something like that, do you think China and the U.S. could come closer in coming to some consensus when it comes to the Korean Peninsula?
I think they could, but that will depend significantly on the U.S. side, frankly. I think China completely supports what's been happening since January 1st in terms of inter-Korean reconciliation, and I think it feels that it opens the door to really have a more broad-based conversation. What remains to be done, frankly, now is for the U.S. to take the initiative and appoint a special interlocutor who could reach out privately to very senior regime figures in Pyongyang so that that conversation gradually behind the scenes can get started and can be formalized down the line. I think President Moon would also appreciate that, but that is not the direction where U.S. policy is going. And frankly, I think the Chinese would be telling the Americans that this is an important time to engage and not an opportunity to miss.
And what happens if the players in the region come up with a solution on their own? I mean, there are reports that, Kim Jong-un's sister, she is there attending the opening ceremony. There could be more conversations there. That's a pretty big step.
Yes, it is a big step, and we must totally encourage those steps. But here's the real danger. The point is, if Kim is going to talk about denuclearization, he will have to do it directly with the Americans. if the Americans don't talk denuclearization with Kim or are willing to talk in terms of security guarantees, et cetera, what the two Koreas can do is only go so far because it does not really tackle the denuclearization topic. And at the end of the day, Korean Peninsula is about denuclearization. So in a way, the Americans do hold a veto, although what will happen is that the American equities within the South Korean population will begin to deteriorate because America would be seen as the party which is holding up. There are green shoots of détente, and it's America which will be seen to not be nurturing those, and that's not a good thing, frankly, I feel.
Well, Yang Jiechi in Washington for another day on Friday. We'll see what that brings as well. Sourabh Gupta, good to see you as always.
Thank you.